When someone hurts us, disrespects us, or leaves us feeling betrayed, our natural instinct is to respond, often with anger, resentment, or a desire to retaliate. But Carl Jung offers a profoundly different perspective, one rooted not in the emotions of the moment, but in the deeper psychological truth of human behavior. Jung would argue that the best revenge is not revenge at all, it is self-mastery. Self-mastery means learning to govern the impulses that arise when we are wounded. It's not about repressing emotion, nor is it about pretending that pain doesn't exist. On the contrary, Jung believed that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That's the key. The people who hurt us often bring to the surface something within us, something unconscious that we have not yet faced or integrated. And in this way, they are not merely enemies, they are paradoxically messengers. You see, the moment we let someone else dictate our emotional state, we hand them control of our inner world. This is what Jung meant when he emphasized the need to withdraw the projection. Instead of seeing the other person as the sole source of our suffering, we are invited to look inward, to ask, why does this hurt me the way it does? What in me is reacting? What part of myself have I disowned that now rises up in anger or despair? These questions are not easy, but they are necessary for anyone who seeks to grow beyond victimhood and step into authentic power. To master the self is to step back from the primitive urge for revenge and move toward a more conscious relationship with our emotions. It is to say, I will not allow your actions to pull me down into my lesser self. I will use this experience to become more whole. Jung would call this the process of individuation, the journey of becoming who we truly are, not by avoiding suffering, but by learning from it. This doesn't mean we let people walk over us. Jung was not advocating for weakness or passivity. On the contrary, he deeply respected strength, but not the reactive, ego-driven strength of retaliation. Rather, the strength of integration, the strength of facing your own shadow and choosing to rise anyway. That is the true warrior's path, not the one who fights with fists, but the one who fights with awareness. When you choose self-mastery, you rob the one who hurt you of the power they once had. You become untouchable, not because you become numb, but because you become wise. You no longer act from the wound, but from the center of your being. And in the end, that is the greatest revenge, not to destroy the other, but to become so deeply aligned with your true self that no one's actions can destroy your peace. The person who hurt you may never change, but you will. And that change, that transformation, is what they can never take from you. Let them keep their pettiness. You, on the other hand, have a soul to grow. When someone wounds us deeply, our immediate reaction is often to see ourselves as victims, powerless, broken, diminished. We ask, why did this happen to me? But Carl Jung invites us to look at suffering not as a meaningless accident, but as a profound opportunity for growth. To Jung, pain is not the enemy. Pain is a messenger. It carries within it the blueprint for transformation, if we have the courage to listen. Jung believed that the very experiences which hurt us most are the ones that contain the seeds of our greatest potential. In his words, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. The person who hurt you may have acted unfairly, cruelly, even maliciously, but what you do with that pain is entirely up to you. And this is where the concept of psychological alchemy comes in. Just as ancient alchemists tried to turn lead into gold, Jung taught us to turn emotional suffering into inner strength. This, he believed, was the real work of the soul. We don't transform by avoiding pain. We transform by confronting it, by entering it with awareness. The wound becomes the gateway. You begin to ask, not just what did they do to me, but what did this awaken in me? What fear, what insecurity, what longing has this experience exposed? In doing so, you stop seeing the event as a dead end and start seeing it as a threshold, a moment that demands your evolution. This is not an easy process. Jung never promised that inner work would be simple or painless, but he insisted it was essential. He knew that if we don't engage consciously with our suffering, we risk becoming bitter, cynical, or emotionally frozen. We may seek revenge, not because it will heal us, but because we don't know what else to do with our pain. But revenge is not transformation, it is a repetition, a recycling of suffering. True healing begins the moment we stop trying to return the hurt and instead ask what the hurt is asking from us. Jung was clear. Where fear is, there is your task. The very place you resist, emotionally, psychologically, is often the exact place where growth is possible. The pain they caused you doesn't have to define you, but it can refine you, sharpening your awareness, deepening your compassion, your complete awakening your potential. When you transform pain into power, you reclaim authorship over your own story. And the one who hurt you, they become irrelevant, not because they disappear, but because your energy is no longer trapped in the past. You are no longer reacting, you are creating. And this act of creation, this inner transmutation, is the highest form of revenge. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it is powerful, it is enduring, it is yours. So the next time pain knocks at your door, don't just ask why me, ask what now. That question alone can change everything. It's a strange thing we humans do when we're hurt. We tend to become like the very person who caused the pain. If someone lashes out at us with cruelty, we often want to respond with cruelty. If someone humiliates us, we feel compelled to prove ourselves superior. In the heat of emotion, we mirror the energy that wounded us. But Carl Jung would warn us against this. You understand that in moments of pain, we are most tempted to identify with the aggressor, to become the very thing we claim to despise. And in doing so, we lose ourselves. Jung would say that such reactions are not conscious decisions. They are unconscious identifications. When we feel powerless, the psyche naturally seeks to regain balance, and one of the fastest yet most destructive ways to do that is through imitation. But Jung psychology is clear, real power lies not in imitation, but in individuation. It lies in the ability to respond from the self, not the wound, and that requires awareness. To become like the person who hurt you is not strength. It is a regression. It is to sink into the same psychic mud from which they struck you. Jung will call this being possessed by a complex, a cluster of emotional reactions that bypass conscious thought and flood you with reactivity. You are no longer acting. You are being acted through. The ego believes it's reclaiming control, but in truth it's recentering to the very darkness it once resisted. This is why understanding must replace reaction. Not agreement, not justification, but understanding. When we take a step back and observe the other person's behavior through the lens of psychology rather than personal attack, we reclaim our center. We might see that their cruelty stems from deep insecurity, their betrayal from unresolved wounds, their aggression from fear. This insight doesn't excuse their behavior, but it frees us from being controlled by it. We are no longer playing their game because we are no longer holding their cards. Jung taught that individuation, becoming who you truly are, means resisting the temptation to lose yourself in another shadow. It means staying rooted in your own values, your own inner truths, even when the world is pulling you toward reaction. This is not a passive stance. It is one of the highest forms of psychological courage. You choose to grow instead of mimic. You choose to expand instead of collapse. And this is where real revenge, if we can call it that, begins to take shape. When you refuse to mirror the lesser nature of another, you rise above it. You deprive their actions of the ability to reshape your character. You become a living contradiction to their cruelty. And that silent contradiction, the integrity of your inner posture, is far more powerful than any outward retaliation. So when someone hurts you, ask yourself, will I reflect them or reflect my true self? One path deepens the wound, the other transforms it into wisdom. Choose wisely, because in that choice lies your freedom. When someone hurts us, the pain doesn't just sit on the surface. It goes somewhere much deeper. It touches something already inside us, something unfinished, something unresolved. Carl Jung understood this with striking clarity. He believed that every emotional wound we experience in the present is linked to earlier material in the psyche. It's never just about them, the ones who hurt us. It's also about us. And more specifically, about the unconscious parts of ourselves that are still waiting to be seen. This is the heart of Jung's concept of the shadow. The shadow isn't evil or malicious, it is simply unknown. It contains all the traits, feelings, desires, and fears we've pushed away because they didn't fit our ideal self-emotion. But these aspects of the self don't disappear. They live in the unconscious, shaping our reactions, our relationships, and yes, even our pain. So when someone wounds us, especially deeply, they are often activating something within our own shadow. That's why the pain feels so disproportionate at times. It's not just about what happened, it's about what it touched. Jung didn't suggest that we should blame ourselves for being hurt, but he did suggest that we take radical responsibility for what the hurt reveals. This is what shadow work is all about. It's the process of turning inward, exploring those uncomfortable emotions, and asking what part of me is being awakened through this pain. Maybe it's a fear of abandonment. Maybe it's a buried rage we've never allowed ourselves to feel. Maybe it's a part of us that never truly believed we were worthy of love or respect. Whatever it is, the hurt is an entry point. The person who harmed you unintentionally highlighted where your soul is asking for integration. Now, this doesn't mean the other person is justified. Jung never confused healing with excusing, but he did believe that every painful encounter could be used as material for the deeper work of individuation. We can't always control what others do to us, but we can choose to meet that pain consciously. We can use it not to fuel our anger, but to fuel our growth. When you engage in shadow work, you take back your power. You begin to understand yourself on levels you never accessed before. You stop repeating patterns. You stop attracting the same wounds in new forms. You stop reacting blindly because you brought the unconscious into the light. Jung's famous line comes to mind: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Shadow work is the act of refusing to live by fate. It is the decision to live by awareness. And perhaps this is the most profound revenge of all. Not becoming bitter, not shutting down, but evolving. When you heal what they touched, they lose their hold on you. Your growth becomes their irrelevance. You walk away not weaker, but more whole. So the next time someone wounds you, pause. Don't just ask, why did they do this to me? Ask instead, what is this showing me about myself? That question is the doorway to transformation and ultimately to freedom. Whenever we are hurt, especially by someone close to us, the desire for revenge often comes not from a conscious, well-considered place, but from the ego. The ego is that part of us that wants control, recognition, and superiority. It feels wounded when slighted. It screams for justice, for retribution, for validation. But Carl Jung invites us to step back from the ego's immediate demands and look deeper into the realm of the soul. The soul, unlike the ego, is not concerned with winning battles. it is concerned with becoming whole. And this is the key distinction. The ego wants revenge to feel powerful again. The soul wants growth to become real again. That difference is not subtle. It's everything. Jung's psychology teaches us that the ego is necessary. It helps us navigate the outer world. But if we allow it to dominate our inner life, we become trapped in cycles of reaction and project. We live at the surface forever defending ourselves, forever caught in the noise of personal injury and the need to strike back. But the soul moves in silence. It speaks not in retaliation, but in integration. It asks us not to escalate conflict, but to evolve beyond it. That doesn't mean becoming passive. Jung was not advocating weakness. He was urging us toward inner strength, strength that comes from depth, not domination. When someone hurts us, the ego says, prove your worth, make them pay, show them who you are. But the soul says something very different. Come closer to your truth. See what this has awakened in you. Use it to grow, not to shrink. These voices pull us in opposite directions. The ego demands we stay in the fight. The soul dares us to transcend it. If we don't pause and reflect, we end up living our entire lives in defense of the ego, always protecting our pride, always fearing humiliation, always reacting to the external world. And in doing so, we miss the deeper journey that Jung called individuation, the lifelong task of becoming who we truly are. That journey cannot be completed through revenge. It can only be walked through insight, courage, and the willingness to transform suffering into wisdom. But let's be honest, revenge feels good. Briefly, it gives us the illusion of balance, the momentary satisfaction of response. But that satisfaction fades quickly and often leaves us feeling emptier than before. Growth, on the other hand, is slower. It asks more of us, but its rewards are lasting. When you begin to operate from the soul, not the ego, you stop needing others to validate your worth. You stop needing to hurt others just because you are hurt. In fact, you begin to see clearly. Those who hurt others are almost always ruled by their own unconscious pain. And if you're not careful, you'll become one of them. Another reactive ego among many. Jung challenges us to rise above that pattern, not with arrogance, but with awareness. So the next time your ego screams for revenge, pause, ask yourself, what would serve my soul, not just my pride? Because in that moment you have a choice, to perpetuate pain or to break the cycle. And that choice determines not just who you become, but whether you truly heal. When we talk about revenge, we're usually talking about a return, an action meant to even the scales. But Carl Jung would argue that the most profound response to being hurt is not about returning anything at all. It's about becoming something more. He believed that the real power lies not in retaliation, but in transformation. And more than that, in the quiet, unwavering commitment to live fully, in alignment with your own potential. You see, when someone wounds us, they often assume that the damage they've caused will define us, that their cruelty will limit our future. But Jung invites us to invert that belief. He challenges us to make the wound not a boundary, but a beginning. And from this place, the best revenge becomes not about hurting them, but about healing you. It becomes about growing into someone so rooted, so whole, so profoundly engaged in their own life's meaning that their actions lose all power over your destiny. This is where the concept of the self comes into Jung's vision, a deeper center of the psyche, far more expansive than the ego. When you are connected to the self, you are no longer chasing validation. You are no longer trying to prove anything to anyone. You are simply becoming. And in that becoming, something remarkable happens. Those who hurt you shrink in importance, not because you suppress the pain, but because you have integrated it. They no longer occupy space at the center of your story. Your growth does. Jung understood that we don't silence our enemies by yelling louder, we silence them by outgrowing them, not in arrogance, but in essence. You build a life so rich with purpose, so deeply aligned with your values that their harm becomes a footnote in your narrative, not a plot. That, Jung would say, is the quiet revenge of wholeness. This transformation isn't loud. It doesn't always look like success in the eyes of the world. Sometimes it's simply the ability to sleep without bitterness, to move through the day without replaying the past, to look in the mirror and know, truly know, that you did not become what you were. You became what you were meant to be. And this is where Jung's psychology departs entirely from shallow ideas of revenge. Because what's more powerful than rising above isn't just rising, it's rising into yourself, fully, authentically, deeply. The people who hurt you may never apologize, they may never change, but you can. And your transformation, your refusal to be reduced, is the most undeniable answer to their action. So when the world tempts you to get even, consider instead what it would mean to grow whole. Because in that wholeness, you are no longer fighting a battle, you're walking your path, and no one, not even the ones who tried to break you, can follow you there. That, in the end, is the most profound revenge of all.